There are very few actors in Hollywood whose image became larger than the person behind it. For Johnny Depp, that image came with eyeliner, dreadlocks, slurred wisdom, and a pirate ship drifting into the horizon. To millions of people around the world, he isn't simply an actor. He is Captain Jack Sparrow. That role transformed him into one of the most recognizable movie stars on the planet, but it also created a strange problem. The more iconic the character became, the harder it was for audiences to separate the performance from the man himself. But long before pirates, billion-dollar franchises, and courtroom headlines, Johnny Depp was something entirely different. He was restless, rebellious, artistic, and unpredictable. A musician who never intended to become a movie star. An outsider who somehow found himself at the center of Hollywood while never truly belonging to it. And behind the eccentric characters and public mythology lies a career filled with risks, reinventions, and performances that many people have forgotten. To understand who Johnny Depp really is as an artist, you have to go back to the beginning, before Jack Sparrow ever existed. Johnny Depp was born on June 9, 1963, in Owensboro, Kentucky, into a working-class family. His father worked as a civil engineer, while his mother held different jobs, including waitressing. Stability was never really part of Depp's childhood. His family moved constantly during his early years, relocating more than 20 times before he reached adulthood. That kind of instability shaped him early. He grew up withdrawn, creative, and disconnected from the traditional path most people expected him to follow. Music became his escape. At the age of 12, Depp received a guitar and became completely obsessed with it. He spent countless hours teaching himself how to play, immersing himself in rock music, and dreaming about performing on stage someday. Acting wasn't even part of the plan. In fact, Hollywood was nowhere near his ambitions. By 16, he dropped out of high school entirely to chase a music career full-time. For a while, that dream seemed real. During his teenage years, Depp played in various garage bands around Florida before eventually joining a group called The Kids. The band developed a decent local following and later relocated to Los Angeles in hopes of securing a recording contract. Like thousands of young musicians arriving in California, they believed success was only one opportunity away. But life had something else waiting for him. Through his first wife, Lori Ann Allison, Depp was introduced to actor Nicolas Cage. Cage immediately noticed something unusual about him: the look, the attitude, the unpredictability, and encouraged him to try acting. Depp had no formal training and almost no interest in the profession at first, but he agreed to audition anyway. That accidental decision changed everything. His very first film appearance came in 1984 with A Nightmare on Elm Street. It wasn't a huge role, but audiences remembered it instantly. Depp played one of Freddy Krueger's victims in a scene so absurdly violent that it became legendary among horror fans. Even then, there was something undeniably magnetic about him on screen. He looked different from the polished young actors Hollywood usually pushed at the time. There was a mystery to him. Television soon followed. In 1987, Depp landed the role that would make him famous across America: undercover officer Tom Hansen in 21 Jump Street. The show exploded in popularity, particularly among teenage audiences, and Depp suddenly found himself transformed into a heartthrob almost overnight. Posters of him covered bedroom walls. Magazines marketed him as the next young Hollywood sensation, and he absolutely hated it. The fame made him deeply uncomfortable because it reduced him to an image he never wanted to become. Depp didn't see himself as a teen idol. He saw himself as an artist. While the industry wanted him playing charming leading men, he became determined to move in the opposite direction entirely. That rebellion would end up defining nearly every major choice he made afterward. Instead of chasing blockbuster action films or romantic comedies, Depp gravitated towards strange, unconventional characters. He wanted roles that felt uncomfortable, emotional, and unpredictable. Roles that allowed him to disappear completely rather than simply play versions of himself. It was a risky strategy because Hollywood rarely rewards actors who refuse to fit inside the system. But Depp never seemed interested in fitting in, and soon he would meet the director who understood that better than anyone else. The turning point arrived in 1990 when Tim Burton cast Johnny Depp in Edward Scissorhands. At the time, it seemed like an unusual choice. Depp was still mostly known as the attractive television star from 21 Jump Street, while Burton was building a reputation for dark, gothic storytelling filled with lonely outsiders and strange dreamlike worlds. But the moment Depp stepped into the role, something clicked immediately. Edward wasn't a traditional movie hero. He was artificial, unfinished, fragile, and painfully isolated from the world around him. Instead of relying on long speeches or dramatic monologues, Depp communicated almost everything through silence, posture, and facial expression. The performance was delicate and emotional in a way audiences didn't expect from him. Suddenly, people realized he wasn't just another handsome actor trying to escape television fame. He was capable of becoming someone entirely different. The film changed his career permanently. More importantly, it introduced a creative partnership that would define a huge part of Depp's identity as an actor. Burton understood Depp's instincts better than most directors did. Both men were drawn toward outsiders, misunderstood figures, and characters trapped between fantasy and reality. Over the years, their collaborations became some of the most visually recognizable films in Hollywood. But during the 1990s, Depp wasn't interested in becoming a conventional superstar. In fact, he seemed determined to avoid mainstream success whenever possible. While other actors chased action franchises and safe commercial projects, Depp selected roles that were strange, risky, and often deeply unconventional. In 1993, he appeared in What's Eating Gilbert Grape alongside a young Leonardo DiCaprio, delivering a restrained performance that quietly anchored the emotional core of the film. A year later, he reunited with Burton for Ed Wood, portraying the famously terrible filmmaker with an unusual combination of optimism, passion, and vulnerability. Critics began taking him seriously. Depp wasn't simply acting anymore. He was transforming himself completely from role to role. He avoided repeating the same performance twice, even when it would have been easier financially. That unpredictability became his trademark. Audiences never fully knew what version of Johnny Depp they were going to get next. Then came Donnie Brasco in 1997. Acting opposite Al Pacino could overwhelm almost anyone, but Depp held his own effortlessly. Playing undercover FBI agent Joseph Pistone, Depp delivered one of the most controlled and mature performances of his career. There was no eccentric makeup, no exaggerated voice, no theatrical energy. Instead, the performance relied on tension, restraint, and emotional conflict. It proved he could succeed in grounded dramatic roles just as easily as stylized fantasy films. Around this period, Depp also became increasingly fascinated with characters who lived on the edge of reality itself. That obsession led him to one of the wildest performances of his career in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in 1998. To prepare for the role of Raoul Duke, based on writer Hunter S. Thompson, Depp immersed himself completely in Thompson's chaotic lifestyle and personality. He shaved his head, altered his appearance, and spent extensive time studying the writer directly. The final performance was frantic, bizarre, and almost hypnotically committed. The movie confused many mainstream viewers at the time, but it reinforced something important about Depp. He was fearless when it came to artistic risks. By the end of the 1990s, he had built a reputation, unlike anyone else in Hollywood. He wasn't the clean-cut leading man studios usually depended on. He wasn't an action star in the traditional sense either. Depp occupied his own category entirely, somewhere between movie star and character actor. And then, just as audiences thought they understood the kind of career he wanted, Disney approached him with an idea that sounded almost ridiculous. A movie based on a theme park ride. At the time, Pirates of the Caribbean was not considered a serious project. Most people inside Hollywood expected it to fail completely. Turning an amusement park attraction into a blockbuster film sounded like a desperate gamble, and many actors would have avoided it entirely. But Depp saw an opportunity. Instead of playing the pirate captain as a standard action hero, he created something audiences had never really seen before. His inspiration came from multiple unexpected places: rock legend Keith Richards, classic comedian Groucho Marx, and even cartoon characters. Depp imagined Jack Sparrow as someone constantly balancing brilliance and absurdity at the same time. The studio executives were reportedly horrified during early screenings. They couldn't understand the slurred speech, the strange movements, or the unpredictable energy Depp brought to the character. Some genuinely believed he was ruining the movie, but producer Jerry Bruckheimer defended him and trusted the performance. That decision would change not only Depp's career, but blockbuster filmmaking itself. Academy Award nomination, something almost unheard of for a fantasy adventure film based on a Disney attraction. More importantly, the character exploded into popular culture. Jack Sparrow impressions appeared everywhere. Halloween costumes flooded stores. Children and adults quoted his lines constantly. Depp had created one of the most recognizable movie characters of the modern era, and for a while, it seemed like the perfect success story. The sequels arrived quickly. Dead Man's Chest in 2006 became one of the highest-grossing films ever released at the time, while At World's End followed in 2007. The franchise dominated global box offices, and Depp became one of the highest-paid actors in Hollywood history. But success came with a cost. For years, Depp had spent his career avoiding typecasting. He deliberately chose unusual roles because he never wanted audiences to see him as only one thing. Ironically, the very performance that made him globally iconic also began overshadowing everything else he had done. To many viewers, Johnny Depp stopped being Johnny Depp. He simply became Jack Sparrow. The later Pirates films continued making enormous amounts of money, but critics increasingly felt the franchise was losing the originality that made the first movie special. As the years passed, the character slowly shifted from a carefully crafted performance into a commercial brand. Merchandise, advertisements, theme park attractions, Jack Sparrow became bigger than the films themselves. And somewhere inside that massive franchise machine, Depp's identity as a risk-taking actor became harder for people to notice. Yet, even during the height of the Pirates phenomenon, he continued pursuing smaller and more demanding performances whenever possible. In Finding Neverland 2004, he portrayed author J.M. Barrie with surprising tenderness and emotional warmth, earning another Oscar nomination. Then came Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street in 2007, where Depp combined dark psychological intensity with musical performance, eventually winning a Golden Globe Award. These films reminded audiences that beneath the eccentric public image was an actor with remarkable range. But eventually, Depp's career became overshadowed by something far larger than cinema itself. In 2022, the defamation trial involving Depp and his former wife Amber Heard became one of the most publicly consumed legal battles in modern entertainment history. Cameras broadcast every moment across social media and television, turning deeply personal conflict into a worldwide spectacle. Regardless of public opinion, the consequences for Depp's career were enormous. Before the trial had even concluded, Disney had already distanced itself from him. Warner Brothers removed him from the Fantastic Beasts franchise. For the first time in decades, it genuinely appeared possible that Hollywood had moved on from Johnny Depp completely. But if there is one pattern that defines Depp's career, it is his refusal to follow the industry's expectations. He had already survived years of criticism earlier in his life. Studio executives once believed he was too strange to become a major star. Media outlets frequently described him as difficult or unpredictable. Yet every time people assumed his career was finished, he found a way to reinvent himself again. This time was no different. Following the trial, Depp began shifting his attention toward more personal creative projects. In 2023, he directed Modi, a film centered on artist Amedeo Modigliani. Rather than waiting for Hollywood to fully embrace him again, Depp focused on creating independently. He also returned to music, continued painting seriously, and expressed interest in smaller European productions far removed from blockbuster franchises. In many ways, that creative independence feels completely consistent with the person he always was. Long before fame, before controversy, and before Captain Jack Sparrow changed his life forever, Johnny Depp was simply an artist searching for freedom. Someone more interested in expression than celebrity. Someone who constantly moved toward the unusual rather than the safe. And maybe that's the reason people remain fascinated by him after all these years. Because beneath the pirate makeup, the headlines, and the mythology surrounding his career, there is still something unpredictable about Johnny Depp. Something audiences cannot fully define or categorize. Whether he ever returns to Jack Sparrow or not, his legacy will likely extend far beyond a single role. After all, the most compelling part of Johnny Depp's story was never the pirate himself. It was always the man underneath.